You caught me in a weird week this week. Um, at work, I was tasked with going to a bunch of different stores to pick up some gift cards. We're doing a celebration of local graduates, and so we're giving away just little amounts of gift cards. And so I went to places like a couple of different Walmart stores and Target and Come and Go and Casey's to pick up some gift cards. And I found myself just standing around watching people for hours this week picking up these gift cards. And I don't know what is going on inside of me, but I often have strong reactions to how people are, um, how they're handling the pandemic. And this week, for whatever reason, just seeing all these people, I didn't feel as passionately, or maybe my passion changed, and I just felt such camaraderie with all of these human beings that are really just doing the best they can. Um, a year into the craziest thing we could have possibly imagined a year ago, talking about it with our kids this week. Did you ever imagine that you'd go home from spring break and just not go back to school for a year? No, that's crazy bananas. Um, and so, yeah, I don't know if my sense of justice is just tired or what, but that's where I've been this week, just seeing all my fellow humans doing the best they can to pick up the things they need at grocery stores. And so, many of you know I've been looking at the fruit of the Spirit and this passage in First Corinthians, and looking at how we can live out love every day. And so this passage, particularly the end of First Corinthians 13, verses 4-8, really stuck with me this week. Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy, brag, become proud, behave itself inappropriately, seek its own way, or become provoked. Love takes no account of evil. Love does not rejoice in unrighteousness, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears, believes, hopes, and endures all things. Love never fails. Now, the last ones are maybe the hardest ones, and the ones that I think are perhaps the loftiest. To endure all things, to never fail. How do we how do we do that? I mean, we're just regular old human beings. How do we love no matter what? How do we love without failing? And so I thought we'd talk through just these couple of ideas. When do you find it hard to keep loving? Or maybe if you want to take the other direction with it, when is it easier to keep loving? What do y'all think? What's true for you? Thank you all. I appreciate you sharing. I appreciate your vulnerability and talking about when it's difficult to keep loving. Seems like maybe this topic will be poignant for some of us today, maybe me most of all. What I want to talk about today, I think the word I ended up landing on was persistence as a means by which we can love every day. And the definition I'm rolling with is perseverance in spite of fatigue or frustration. That seems like a pretty good definition for where some of us are right now, a year into this crazy mess. So I want to talk about how we can love by persistence. And I think for me, it starts off by persisting in community. One of the things that's been easiest for introverts like me to do during this whole time is to just radically change my life and withdraw from people. Like, it's super easy to just stay in my house and not bother with even going out in public to go shopping. I mean, they'll bring it to my car. And so one of the challenges that faces people like me, maybe people like you, is not giving up on community as we start to come out of this time, to not just take the easy way of, well, I live on my own now and I don't interact with humans, to start to reintegrate in ways that honor other people and still keep them safe. Um, and I came across this verse in First Peter chapter 4. It's verses 8 and 10. It says, above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins. As each has received a gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of God's varied grace. And several of us on Tuesday night are talking through what it means to be mature. And I think anytime we can find new ways to love, that's an act of maturity. But I think one of the images of maturity is a great big healthy tree. And a great big healthy tree provides benefits that there are lots of them. Like, it can shade your house, and it actually makes the temperature around the ground cooler. It provides shelter for all kinds of animals and sometimes food. It holds the soil in place so it's not eroded. Like, just because of the existence of this big mature tree, there's all kinds of other benefits just from it being where it is. And I think the same is true for us as we are on the path of maturity. I don't think we ever arrive at maturity. It's a thing we constantly work on. But as we mature and grow, one of the things we can do is recognize that we each have been given at least one gift. And if we don't use that gift specifically for other people, that gift in the world is lost. And so persisting in community is necessary for God to move and act in the world, because God wants to move and act through each of us. And it's hard to do when you're tired or when you're frustrated. And so one of the ways I try to persist in community is to just show up, no matter how I show up that day. If I'm tired or happy or grumpy and need to eat a Snickers bar to retain my equilibrium, just be there with people. Because if you can show up just as you are, it gives other people permission to show up just as they are. And that's part of what fosters a healthy community. Is we're not necessarily always putting on a happy face, but we're showing up. And the times, several of you have mentioned, just another person existing in the world and flashing a quick smile as you walk by can change your entire day. The same is true when you exist in community. If you can persist in community, if you can show up as you are, it is an immense benefit to other people. And so we can persist in community by showing up as you are for the good of other people. It's not just about what we want, but it's also about being that mature tree and being a benefit to those that we encounter. Next is to persist intentionally. If you have interacted with a toddler, one of the best questions that a toddler asks is why. I love it. I never really grew out of that. Like, why is the sky blue? And why do birds sing? And why are the grains on the beach all different colors? Like, all kinds of different why questions, which is adorable in toddlers. But then you get to teenagers, which are somewhat less adorable. Teenagers ask why, but it's about, why do we do this thing? Like, why do we have to go to this party? Why do we have to write a thank you card when we receive a scholarship? Like, why is a very different question from a teenager than it is from a toddler. But what's difficult for it's difficult for all of us to do a thing if we don't understand why we are doing it. If we don't have an intention behind our actions, it's really easy for us to just quit doing the thing. And so in James chapter 1, verses 2-4, it says this: count it all joy, my sisters and brothers, when you meet trials of various kinds, for you know that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. And let steadfastness have its full effect, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking in nothing. And it's been easy during this pandemic to ask, why do we have to wear masks? And why do we have to stay away from our loved ones? And why should we get a vaccine that is very new? Like, it seems a little sketchy. The why question, if we can answer it, if we can think about it and come up with an answer why, it makes all of those inconveniences bearable. I think it's how some of us have managed to persist during this craziness for so long, because we understand why we are doing things. And so that's one of the things that I try to do to show up loving with persistence, is to bring to mind your values. Ultimately, every decision that we make is a choice between two values. The really hard decisions are a choice between two values that we hold very dearly. And that's why they're hard decisions, is because we value both of these things. How could we possibly choose between them? But if we can bring our values to mind, if we can think about why we would choose something and really get at the heart of that, to be like a toddler or a teenager and ask why, then those decisions become at least more understandable, if not a lot easier to make. And so we can persist intentionally and see growth in ourselves by living out our values. Finally, I want to talk about persisting stubbornly. My parents aren't here this morning, so I can tell you this story. I've been in a total of 3 physical altercations in my entire life. One of them I was the instigator, and 2 I was not. I think it might be the last fight I was in. Maybe the second one. I was around 10 years old, and there was this kid in my neighborhood that he was kind of mean. I think he had a messed up home life, but something happened. We were over at my friend Sean's house, and he decided that he didn't like me very much, and he wanted me to say or do something. I don't know, but I was refusing to say or do this thing. And so he pushed me over and he sat on top of me, and he was hitting me repeatedly in the back of the head until I said this thing that he wanted me to say. Well, I just decided I was going to be knocked unconscious before I said this thing that he wanted me to say. And so I just kept getting hit in the back of the head with my face in the ground. And I just decided I was going to be extra stubborn. Or maybe that's where the stubbornness started. I don't know. But I'm a pretty stubborn human being. He eventually got tired of hitting my skull and left, me having not said the thing that he wanted me to say. And I don't necessarily know that that's like an admirable trait, to be stubborn, but I think that we can use maybe some of our inherent stubbornness to keep loving, to not give up in loving. In Proverbs chapter 24, verse 16, it says, "For the righteous falls 7 times and rises again, but the wicked stumble in times of calamity." My very favorite Japanese proverb is this: fall down 7 times, stand up 8. And it really gets to that stubbornness that I hold as kind of a high value of my own. Maybe if you're not into Japanese proverbs, there's a recent superhero movie called Captain Marvel where they capture this idea of you get knocked down and you just keep standing up. Over and over again in Carol Danvers' life, she gets knocked down and told that she's not strong and she should just stay down. And over and over and over again, she stands up. And she doesn't do it because, she's necessarily like me and just wants to prove other people wrong. She does it as maybe her defining quality, to not stop standing up for the people that need standing up for. And so it's easy to give up, and it's also easy to beat yourself up, to just make yourself keep standing up. So one of the ways that I've found to make this stubbornness a reality, to live out stubbornness, is to just take a minute. Animals will often stop and lick their wounds when they're injured before they get up. It's very good and healthy to take a minute when you're feeling knocked down, when you're feeling beat up, to lick your wounds. Take a minute and then get up again and refuse to stop loving. Use your stubbornness as a spiritual gift and refuse to stay down. So we can persist stubbornly, because really, what's the point of giving up? Like, that's not fun. That doesn't show anything. That doesn't reveal the heart of God. So the three ways that I've found to live out this persistence in love is to just show up, to bring to mind your values, and to take a minute, reevaluate, and persist. There's this psalm, in Psalm 100, verse 5. It says, "For the Lord is good, and his love endures forever. His faithfulness continues through all generations." And thinking about this verse in 1 Corinthians that seems to get at this idea of love persisting, it seems like the most impossible thing to do, when in fact it is maybe the most godlike thing to do, to never stop loving. no matter who they are, no matter what they've done, to love, because love persists. So may you persist in community for yourself and for those who are strengthened by you. May you know that your persistence, like a tree in a rainstorm, produces the life you are looking for. When you fall, may you rise with stubborn love. And in you, may the love of God persist.